Welcome, everybody. In today's video, we have Todd, who is from the United States, and he was going to head out to the Philippines, but with the Philippines being shut down, he decided to head out to Colombia, and he is there currently. And Todd, thank you for joining us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful. It's great to be part of your video, and Medellin is a wonderful city, and having a great time.
Now, you have traveled there before?
No, this is my first time.
First time.
You know, with the challenges that we all face in Southeast Asia and getting back there, just needed to get away for a break.
Absolutely. And where in the United States are you from? What state?
I live in Colorado.
Colorado. Oh, awesome. I used to live in Colorado, in Colorado Springs. So nice, nice area.
Yep, absolutely.
And if you don't mind, how old are you, Todd?
I'm 54.
54. Okay.
Yes.
And I interviewed somebody from Colombia who in Medellin as well, but I don't think my audience related to him as much, just because I think he was a younger guy, still in his 30s, and I think most of us are more near retirement age, you know, late 40s, 50s, 60s even. So it's good to have a different perspective.
Yeah, I did see that video, and you know, when I saw it, I definitely had mixed emotions about coming here, because I did feel like it would be more of a environment for a younger crowd, and it is very different than the Philippines, but I still think it's a wonderful place to visit.
And how many times have you been to the Philippines?
I would say well over 15 times.
15 times. Okay. And have you been out to other countries in Latin America, or is this?
Yeah, I've gone for work to Chile and Argentina. I've been to Panama. I've been to Costa Rica, Honduras, of course, Mexico, many times. It's, you know, they're all different countries, and in some ways they have a European flair to them, even though they're in South America. You know, they always say that Buenos Aires is the Paris of South America.
Right.
So.
Well, I guess after World War II, really, there was a kind of a mass exodus of Italians and Germans that went to Argentina, I believe, right? And
They did.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, so how did you decide on Colombia? I'm sure you were originally going to go back to the Philippines, and what made you think of Colombia to go to?
You know, watching a lot of videos and just deciding to get a break, really it comes down to accessibility, potentially a place to visit more often. It's a quick flight from the United States. From Denver, I was able to go to Houston, to Panama, right into Medellin, and travel time was not bad, you know, and it's just very easy to get here, and it wasn't that expensive.
I think that's a big plus for a lot of people who do live like in the Canada, United States, is that it's not that far away. It's not a drastic time change usually, and it's cheaper. And if you do need, if some emergency comes up with a family member, or you have a medical emergency, at least you can get back home, you know, within 4 hours or so, or what have you. And I think that's one thing people tend to forget. You know, if they're living out in Southeast Asia and something happens, you're
right
a couple days away.
Especially if you're in some of the remote places like Dumaguete or something like that, where you have to, you know, go to another major airport to get out of there. I mean, I met some foreigners here, some Americans that were from Florida, and there's a direct flight on JetBlue from Miami to Medellin.
Yeah, absolutely. So, so you decided on Colombia, and then how about city? Did you research the cities, or how did you come to decide on Medellin?
I mean, Medellin is probably the nicest that I would guess. I mean, I've only been here, but Bogota, you know, it's a big major city, probably very similar to Manila. A lot of crime, a lot of pollution and stuff like that. Cali, Cartagena are two other cities that people go to, but in a lot of ways, Medellin, the climate is so wonderful here. It stands at about 1,500 meters, or about just under 5,000 feet above sea level. So it's very similar to the altitude of Denver. So that's one thing to consider if people want to come here, is that it is a high altitude city.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about so let's kind of compare some different um, things about the Philippines and Colombia. For example, the top thing on everybody's list usually is infrastructure. I would say one of the
Yeah.
top things. How do you compare the infrastructure from the Philippines to where you're at in Medellin right now?
So if I go out in the Philippines, whether it be in Manila or perhaps the Subic area, whatever it may be, when you're walking down the street, you constantly have to look down at your feet, because
Right.
the sidewalks are falling apart. There'll be blocks missing where there's water that you could step into. So that's one of the big things about the Philippines. It's a challenge. The other thing is there's no trikes and no jeepneys here. So you don't have that blaring exhaust noise.
Right.
People do have motor scooters, and as far as infrastructure here, the sidewalks are all good. They keep them clean. Uber is here, for instance. It's simple to use. It from where I'm staying, which is in El Poblado near Paquilleres.
Hmm.
It's about a $3 Uber ride to El Centro. The Wi-Fi is great, 50 up, 50 down at my hotel, and
Wow.
the infrastructure is better here. But of course, you miss some of the things of the Philippines. The Philippines has a culture that's very endearing and very friendly as well.
Absolutely. So as far as infrastructure, Colombia for the win on infrastructure.
I think so. Yeah, I think people would be happier here. Absolutely.
How about, because one thing, if you're walking down the road in the Philippines, you have three kinds of pollution. You've got the noise pollution with the blaring horns. You've got the air pollution with the exhaust and the dirt kicked up. And, a lot
Yeah.
of times people burn trash and a lot of trash on the ground. What about in Medellin there? How's the pollution?
The pollution is pretty well contained, especially for a high altitude city where sometimes you get that brown cloud over the city.
Hmm.
They use trains here, for instance. They have what I would consider not trolley cars, but more like trams to take you around the city. So they do have a good infrastructure of public transportation. They have buses as well,
Right.
a lot of taxis, which are all inexpensive. But you don't have, I've driven in the Philippines, and in a rental car, for instance, and you've got kids running out into the street. You've got trikes, you've got motorcycles, you've got jeepneys, you've got big buses. It's more chaotic in a lot of ways.
Absolutely. Okay, so we talked about infrastructure. What about dating? And I know you haven't been there that long, but from the time that you've been there, how do you think, and not just dating, but maybe just the friendliness of the people, and how is that compared to the Philippines?
Sure, sure. My information that I got about that is through meeting other foreigners here and
Hmm.
talking to people. And one of the things that's really important here is to speak some Spanish.
Sure.
The more you speak, the better. So in the Philippines, people speak English, of course, Tagalog, and depending on where you are, other dialects. But you do need to be able to speak Spanish here. People really struggle with English.
Right.
So I think that's important. I talked to some guys that I met that were from the United States, and they said that prior to coming here, they opened an account on Tinder. They
Hmm.
probably had maybe 200 messages after 5 minutes, and a lot of that is really used for what they call sugar babies and sugar daddies and
Hmm.
stuff like that. So
Right.
that scene itself is very prevalent. And if you go down to Paquilleres, which is kind of in the nice area of Poblado, there's beautiful restaurants, beautiful bars, great
Hmm.
food and everything. but the whole square there is loaded with professionals.
Oh, okay. So,
So
as far as friendliness, you think the Philippines is a bit friendlier, but I suppose that could also be contributed to just the fact that everybody's able to speak English. So,
it does help, but I do think that um, there's a couple things that came to mind. One is there is a middle class here in Medellin.
mhm,
I've met some people that work in either retail sales or in graphic design and stuff, and they can make enough money to live on their own. For instance, a two-bedroom apartment here can be anywhere from, I'll give it in US dollars, 600 a month to 1,000 a month furnished, depending on location. And
okay,
people are able to survive and make enough money to do that here. Whereas in the Philippines, typically, if the average salary of somebody that's working pretty hard is 10,000 pesos a month,
right.
you can't live on that.
No, no. So, a couple more questions on the people there. So, do you do you see age gap relationships like you do in the Philippines? Because in the Philippines, it's not that uncommon to have a 60-year-old guy date a 20-year-old girl, or a 40-year-old
Yeah,
date a 25-year-old, or what have you. So, what about in Colombia? My guess is that it's not as much of an age gap. Like they don't do that as
right.
often.
You would not see that. I mean, clearly it's very common in the Philippines or Thailand to
Hmm.
see, a significant 20, 30 plus year age gap. Here, it's not as common. I do think if you do see it, it's probably a mutually beneficial relationship. Um, I also would say that I did talk to a couple of women that were waiting outside a restaurant the other night,
Hmm.
and I just asked them some general questions. They were in their early 30s,
Hmm.
and they've never dated a foreigner. And So I think it's less common. I think if you got your feet on the ground and settled in here and got into a
Hmm.
network, you would have better success regardless.
And I think you definitely would have to speak some Spanish at least too.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because even the people here, I'm staying at a nice hotel, even the people here downstairs struggle with English at the hotel.
Right. Gotcha. One last question. We'll who wins out on beauty for the women,
You know, I
Colombia
think
or Philippines?
I think the Philippines win. It's always going to be personal.
Sure.
I think the Philippines have kind of a mixed beauty in regards to some have a little bit more Spanish in them, some have a more Asian in it. It's kind of the best of both worlds in the Philippines. And here there's of course the Colombian women are very beautiful.
Right.
There's also some competition here because we've got a lot of people coming in from Venezuela.
Uh,
So you can see that little bit of infighting between the women from Venezuela and Colombia. The Colombians are so proud of their country, and I think
sure.
they, sort of feel a little bit slighted about what they would call foreigners coming in from the next country over.
Right. Okay. So Philippines wins on the dating and the beauty and that. So
Yes, yeah,
okay. What about cost of living? I know you're not living there. It's hard to get a true feel of I suppose of the cost of everyday cost of living. But you've kind of spent some time there and you've looked
yeah.
around. What's the average apartment, do you think,
I
goes for?
think that would be more expensive than the Philippines, depending on the neighborhood. And if you come here to Medellin, you're going to want to live in El Poblado. You're not going to want to live in El Centro because everybody will tell you you need to be out of El Centro by about 6:30 at night because the
Okay.
crazy people come out and that kind of thing. Uh, so if you were going to live, right off of Pacayeras and get a two-bedroom furnished apartment, you'd spend
Mhm.
$1,000 a month.
Okay.
If you were going to live 15 minutes away in a nice neighborhood, more residential, away from the restaurants and bars, you probably get something for $600 a month.
Okay.
Um, as
Me.
far as the Philippines, that's been covered well, how much it costs there. But I would say if you wanted to come here and retire, and if you wanted to have a good life,
Hmm.
and you had a girlfriend or something like that, you could live very well for $2,000 a month.
Okay. So really, still much lower than what it would cost to live in the U.S. or something.
Sure, sure.
Yeah. Okay. So cost of living, but however, the infrastructure is better, so you're getting a little bit more too, I suppose.
Right,
So.
right. You give up the beauty. I will say, the Philippines has the beaches,
Hmm.
they have the waterfalls. It's beautiful here, and it's green. They get a lot of rain,
Hmm.
but you're not going to top the beaches and the you know. But the climate here is wonderful for those Americans that don't like it as hot as it is in the Philippines.
Yeah.
This is a great alternative. This is a great alternative. And you could easily take a side trip and go over to the beach on the Pacific and visit other countries very easily in South America and Latin America. It's very close to, Costa Rica, for instance, and many of the other countries down here.
Now, I heard you mention something about safety in a certain neighborhood. You wouldn't want to go out after 6:30. So, how about safety? How do you feel walking around during the day or in the evening or?
Where I'm staying, there's no problem. There's so many police out in Paquietas, in El Poblado.
Okay.
There are so many police out, is not even funny. They know they need to protect that infrastructure. But I don't think that because of El Centro being so uh, crowded and there's so many people down there, it's nice. I've gone down there during the day to eat and to meet other people, but it's called Botano Park, and it's El Centro. But
Sure.
everybody tells you basically you need to be out of there by 6:30, and the restaurants all close. It's just little side bars and stuff like that you can see, and there's it's very dark in there. It does look scary. I mean, I wouldn't want to be
Mhm.
there at night. Um, I've been offered to buy cocaine probably every day, several times here. You smell marijuana constantly, no matter where you are.
Yeah. So, as basically as long as you stay in the safe areas, you're fine. But there are areas that you wouldn't want to go into. Sounds like
Yeah, at night. I think
at night.
just at night, though. I do think El Centro during the day, there's lots of police and security out, and
Hmm.
there's great restaurants, traditional Colombian restaurants. You know, the food hands down wins here.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's so simple, it's delicious,
Yep.
and it's inexpensive.
It's not hard to beat the food in the Philippines. I always say this. There's a reason why you don't find Filipino restaurants all over the world, right?
Yeah, there are pockets in California, but yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
As far as other costs, a beer is about the same. A local light beer is about $1.30.
Hmm.
You can get it cheaper if you buy it elsewhere, probably. I do think. I got a professional massage, so I'll qualify that by saying it
Yeah.
was a
Yeah.
real authentic massage, and
Okay.
it was an hour, and it was with tip $30. So it's
Okay.
much more expensive than the Philippines.
It is, which is in the Philippines, it's about $6 for 1 hour. Typically,
Right,
is what I found, about 300 pesos. So,
right, right.
uh,
And then I also, as far as I got my fingernails and my toenails done today as well.
hmm.
They did a great job, but it was about $13.
Okay. So I'm not sure how much that costs in the Philippines, but probably less, I'm sure.
Well, and I know that you always talk about how much you spend on a haircut, but I can't really comment on that.
Yeah. I got a few more years left of hair, I think. So,
Yeah, yes.
crossing fingers. So, but I used to go to, in Vietnam, they had these what they call man spas, where beautiful Vietnamese ladies would all pamper you. One would give you a manicure, the other shoulder massage, facial, haircut, the whole thing, and it would cost like around $7-8, which was crazy. But that
Yeah.
was in Vietnam. So okay, so infrastructure Colombia, food Colombia, friendliness and the beauty of the women Philippines. As far as nature and stuff, it sounds like you're saying the Philippines with the beaches and the
Yeah.
waterfalls and
Yeah. The only drawback to the Philippines is, some areas extremely hot and humid, and,
mhm,
you know, the air conditioning is necessary a lot of the time. Here,
it
you
is.
go out at night, and if you're sitting outside for dinner, and, of course, it's comfortable. It's 60, 70 degrees, very low humidity.
Hmm.
So, in a lot of ways, the temperature and the climate is wonderful here.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah, but the Philippines for beaches and for snorkeling and diving and stuff like that's probably a big draw to go to the Philippines.
absolutely. So you're just here in Colombia for a few weeks, and then you're heading back home. Any travel plans after that, or are you just gonna wait for the Philippines to open, or what's
I'll
your
probably
next?
wait until they open up. I've tried to get a visa for work,
Hmm.
and that was denied. I
Okay,
still have a couple more avenues, but there's always going to be speculation and rumors until it happens. You know what the Philippines is like.
right.
It's hard. The other thing that has struck me a little bit is everywhere takes credit cards here, and in the Philippines it's a
Hmm.
cash society.
Right.
But and all the ATMs work here. It's those are kind of things that when you go to the Philippines, even if they have like a credit card sign on the door, you go
Mhm.
in, they tell you the machine's broken every time. So,
Yeah,
you know,
or they'll say it's offline, they can't connect. Yeah. So
exactly.
in the Philippines, it's often you hear out of stock and those things, and so Colombia and I think most countries, honestly, that it's unique to the Philippines. The
It is, and I've had to do some paperwork and some business things in the Philippines in the past, and
hmm
it's a headache. Getting anything done in
sure.
the Philippines is usually a headache. I haven't done anything, document wise or anything, but there is a FedEx here in Medellin. I saw that,
Hmm.
and the hotel has lots of computers and infrastructure. So those are some niceties that if people come here and visit. But if you're looking at retiring or you're thinking about where you might want to go, you just got to go there and spend some time because
Yeah.
a lot of people that might meet somebody on a dating site, for instance, the Philippines or something like that, and never been, and maybe they
Hmm.
get there and they can't live there. And the same
Right.
with Colombia. Maybe the language barrier would be too much for them, but you just got to go and visit. But this has been a great trip. I've really enjoyed it, and I like I said, the food here is wonderful. The the people are nice, but you do need a little Spanish, as I said.
For sure. Do you have a country that's kind of a close second to the Philippines that you've been to, like Thailand or someplace? Have you been to other countries that you really like?
I do like Thailand. Definitely like Phuket and some of the islands off of Phuket.
Hmm.
They're beautiful. Bangkok's a crazy city, of course,
Yeah,
but the food there in Thailand is awesome.
it is.
Where do people go? I know you've got somebody you talk to in Turkey,
Hmm.
seeming to have a good time. I liked Budapest a lot. I fell in love with Budapest when I went there, and I also loved Krakow, Poland.
Hmm. It's funny you mentioned that. When I was in the army, I was stationed in Germany, and I had a Russian girlfriend in Budapest, and I would go there every weekend for a while. But uh, Budapest is interesting. It's actually two cities, Buda, and then you have the separated by the river and Pest. Um,
Yeah, the Danube River cuts it, and there's
yeah,
beautiful
beautiful
bridges
city.
with lights at night. It's gorgeous there.
Yeah, very, very pretty women there too. Um,
Absolutely.
but again, language is a huge barrier. So
It is. And, in some ways in Thailand, the language barrier is tough too.
for sure.
But I do think with, the how well the British have been entrenched in Thailand, I think people probably do better than other countries.
Sure. So you're gonna wait out the Philippines, or do you think you might travel someplace else in the meantime?
At this point, I'll probably wait and just see what happens
Hmm.
at the beginning of the year and see if things change. It's hard to say, but if the delay in vaccination distribution, all those other things that are going on, if
Sure.
I expect that I probably will get the vaccine. I expect that I'll probably be able to get it maybe late December, early January, since I work in healthcare. But
Sure.
I do think that if they open up and say, you need some type of documentation, yeah, I would go. But I
Okay.
think that, buyer beware, because if you go and you don't have a specific reason to go to the Philippines, you may not enjoy some of the restrictions.
Yep.
Being told where you can go. I know the tourism bubbles, and for instance, Baguio I think had to lock themselves down, even though they were trying to open up and things
Right.
like that.
So, well, I guess we'll kind of end it with saying, would you return to Colombia? Is it a place that's on your radar now that you would like to return to, you think?
I would. I definitely would consider this. A lot of people like it for quality of life.
Yeah.
The ease of getting around. It's inexpensive. So I definitely would come back. I probably would come back with some friends. And,
Hmm.
this is a time where you don't have a lot of people raising their hands saying, yeah, I want to go on a trip or something like that. But I think it would be a fun
Sure.
place, for a couple of friends to go down and maybe get an Airbnb and, have a good time, because you can have a good time here for sure.
I mean, really, it sounds like there's a lot of benefits if you'd want to live in Colombia, the close proximity to the U.S., probably better medical care. And as far as I know, they're actually known for their good health care in Colombia, is what I heard.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, they do have good medicine. And actually, I went to a pharmacy here
mhm.
to buy some medicine to take back. And actually, it'll probably be something that I bring to the Philippines, because I have a prescription drug plan at home for anything
Mhm.
I need. But people complain about the price of medicine in the Philippines.
Right.
Here, it is dirt cheap. I mean, I bought 8 boxes of different types of medicines, like acid blockers and different types of antibiotics and stuff like that. And
Hmm.
I spent like $6 or $7.
Wow.
So medicine is cheaper here for sure.
Okay. So again, it seems like there's a lot of pluses for Colombia, a lot of pluses for the Philippines, and really it just depends on the individual, I guess, is how we would summarize it, I suppose.
I think, I think that there will be more and more Americans coming here
Yeah.
because they need a diversion. I mean, there's a lot of people that will not want to retire in the United States. If they hit 60, 62, they'll take their Social Security, maybe their 401k, and decide that their dollar is going to go a lot further. And, you
Hmm.
know, I mean, I'm only 54, but if I was 62 and faced with making decisions, it'd be really hard decision to make to go to the Philippines right now. And I know you've tried to, go over to Kuala Lumpur or other places, and
Yep.
you're kind of stuck too. So
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what I'll do is the hotel you're staying at, right at the end of the video here, I'll flash up some photos that you sent me of some of the great meals, and it looks like you have an infinity pool at the top, is in a bar, or
yeah, yeah, it's beautiful. They light it up at night, and it's small, but it's decent size. It's right on the roof of the hotel, and they've got a bar and a restaurant adjacent to it. And there's music. And as far as during COVID, you wear a mask outside, but as soon as you get into a restaurant, you take it off
Mhm.
when you get to the table. The servers are all wearing masks, but
Okay.
if you're in the park and They allow you to drink beer and walk around in the park. You can drink a beer and not have to worry about it.
Wow.
So
Okay. Awesome.
it's very free. There's no checkpoints, no restrictions of going anywhere around Medellin. So
When you landed in Medellin, there was no check anymore, right? For COVID, you just landed, and I think, what do you do? A temperature scan, and that's it, or?
literally, I got off the plane. I walked off the hallway down towards immigration, and about 10 feet before immigration, I stood in front of one of those monitors, and it read out my temperature, and they just let me go. I got in line for passports, showed them my passport, and you do have to register a migration form. Takes about 5 minutes within 24 hours of your flight here.
Okay.
I had that printed out in my passport, showed them. Literally, from getting off the plane to getting my bag and being available for taxi, 15 minutes.
Wow. Fantastic.
It was amazing.
Okay. Well, I appreciate your time, Todd. I appreciate it a lot, giving us some insight into Colombia. So thank you for your time today.
Absolutely. And I just suggest to anybody, it's worth a trip. I've had a great time, and, I love the Philippines, and looking forward to getting back. But, I want to get back when it's a good time in the Philippines as well.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate your time again, Todd. We'll see you later. Take care.
Thank you. Take care.